There it is. All right, ladies and gents, everybody, we are back for an awesome show. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I'm really excited about financial coaching, finances. This is my bread and butter. So let's jump in. Let's have some fun.
Practicing Polyamory, real-life perspectives from the imperfect people of polyamory. The mission of the Practicing Polyamory podcast is to provide a platform for all of the real-life, flawed humans that practice polyamory so that we might all learn from one another and grow as a community. Enjoy the show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to this beautiful day. Before we jump in and chat with our awesome guests, I want to remind everybody that we do 3 shows every week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We are open for questions. So if you have questions about your relationships, if there's a topic that you'd like to hear discussed on the show, or if you tune in live, you can ask us questions live on the show. Follow us on all social medias at Practicing Polya. Send me a message so we can cover any topic that you want on the show. And as always, I want to remind everybody, if you're listening to this podcast, you are a welcome guest to be on the show. We're here to share our imperfect stories. And I want to get as many voices as possible to speak here, because I know that the more stories we hear, the more others will see us in themselves. And the more representation we have, the more we can strengthen our community. So go to practicingpolyamory.com and sign up today. All right. I apologize. I said ladies and gentlemen earlier, but ladies and gentlethems, let's get on to the best part of the show and introduce our awesome guest. Our guest today knows that money is an emotional subject. Depending on how you grew up, the subject of money can often be scary, daunting, and overwhelming. Sometimes it's the fear of not having enough. Other times, it's the fear of losing everything you have. After years of toiling with unfulfilling jobs that paid well but offered no sense of purpose, our guest learned that his emotions around money were holding him back. He decided it was time for a change, and he embarked on a journey of self-discovery. Our guest realized that, much like all our other relationships, each of us has an attachment style to money. He used this knowledge to heal his own relationship, which helped him move from money anxiety to financial empowerment. And now he wants to help do the same for polycules and marginalized communities everywhere. Along with a quiz to help you identify your money attachment style, our guest is offering a free course called the 5-Day Money Reset. And today, we'll learn what those 5 days are all about and plenty more. Joining us today from Empathic Finance out of Portland, Oregon, welcome to the show, Mike Pumphrey.
I know what it's like to lose.
I don't have my producer today. I totally hit the wrong button. Mike.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you very
awesome.
much. It is great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
It is such a pleasure, man. You have quite a story, and finance in general. This is, close to my heart. I'm an entrepreneur. I've got my business. I've been doing all kinds of financial stuff, I've been, I guess, an entrepreneur for most of my life. Tell me your story, though. This is what we're here to hear. Tell me your story. Tell me about your money journey, and we'll get into the rest of the stuff there too.
Sure, sounds great. So it's funny that you say that money is close to your heart, because I've found actually that's true for a lot of people, but not actually in a good way. I think a lot of people would prefer that money was a little bit farther away from their heart, because people have a lot of anxiety and difficulties around money. And I am no different. I grew up in a very anxious family in terms of money. So there was a lot of, we never went hungry. We were never out on the street or anything like that. But there was always a sense that there was a financial disaster around the corner. And so I grew up feeling anxious about money. And that's one of the things that many years later taught me that there's a difference between actually having money challenges, in terms of your budget and how much money you have, and how much money you feel like you have. So the emotions around money can be very different from the actual amounts of money you have. Because a lot of people feel poor, but are they poor? Like, they might not be. Like, what does even poor mean?
Right. Well, I always say poor is a mentality, broke is a temporary situation. I want to say that was a Robert Kiyosaki thing. But yeah. I mean, when we get into those situations, when we grow up having not a ton of money, barely scraping by, we start to develop these emotions around it. For you, what was your attachment? What were your emotions around money before you made this realization, and how did it change?
So for me, growing up in an anxious family around money, I always believed that I was never going to have enough, that I was going to be poor, that I was going to be broken out on the street. I had even into my 20s, there was this retail job that I had, and I was always and I left it, but I was always afraid that someday I'm just going to end up back there. Kind of like that dream that you have that you're still in high school and there's a final exam, but you haven't been to class. And you just and you have that dream, you're just like, oh no, I thought I graduated from high school. I was always worried about that with jobs and income and that sort of thing. So what my coping strategy was to figure out everything about money, just like everything, to get super nerdy, super focused, and basically try and micromanage everything about money in my own personal world. And that was fine. That was great. And then after a while, I realized that, wait a second, that isn't necessarily the whole story. I realized that I was still harboring a lot of these fears and feelings about money, about not having enough and never going to be enough. And I realized that any amount of micromanaging and spreadsheets and saving 35 cents on the thing that I was about to buy wasn't really getting to the heart of what was really important. And so I embarked on a little bit of a journey, realizing that you can't separate emotions from money. And if you do that, you're really only getting half the picture. And so for me, learning that money connects to every part of your life, especially your emotions, your fears, your dreams, your goals, and everything, that really was a catalyzing moment for me. And I realized that there's something here, and I needed to follow that through.
That is powerful. It's just powerful. I mean, there's when you talk about the emotions of money, I mean, there are few things that get me more anxious, right? Running a business and having employees and having, people that count on me, people that depend on me, like that puts a lot of pressure. And having, when there's issues around money, it gets really intense, really scary, can drive me into, into states of depression, even. Like it gets really bad. So when we learn to take that anxiety, when we learn to, it's not a matter, you said, it's not a matter of separating emotion. It's the fact that they're completely tied together. It's just recognizing that. And what's the next thing? Once we recognize it, once we identify it, what's the next piece of the puzzle?
So for me, I like to talk about one's money story. So we all have a money story. We all have beliefs around money, what we believe to be true about ourselves, what we believe to be true about money. Like, money is out there waiting to be had. Some people believe that. Some people think that there's never enough. And if I have $1, then someone doesn't have $1. And like, there's this kind of a zero sum. And there are some people that just like, money, what? I don't want to think about it. And they just avoid it, and they try and spend as little as possible time thinking about money. So recognizing what your own money story is such a powerful thing to do, because once you do that, and this is true about any kind of personal development, you can ask yourself, okay, is this working for me? I'm sure, that's a kind of a thing that people find in mental health situations with a therapist. This is a belief you have. Is this working for you? Because I find that a lot of people can't get out of their own way when it comes to money. Mm-hmm. There are opportunities out there that allow people to thrive. But if you don't believe that they're out there, if you don't think that that's part of you, you're going to walk past a $100,000 opportunity and you're not even going to see it.
I think about one of my good buddies, one of my best friends from the Navy. I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. And early on when we met, I told him about buying, real estate and, all these different things. And he was like, okay, well, when we're done with this Navy stuff, I'll go work for you. It's fine. And I was like, well, what do you want to do? He said, I just want to be 65 and retire and, whatever, like everybody else does. So there's like this difference of what's possible and what's realistic for each different person. And I guess that's the part that it sounds like you get to the heart of. Like, what is the story that you accept and you tell yourself around money, and what possibilities do you see for yourself? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they, we're kind of, thrown out into the world, and we have jobs and we make money and we got to make more money and we have to earn more income. But a lot of times we don't stop to think why. We don't stop to ask ourselves, what are we really looking for? Like, oh, we have to put enough money away to retire, all these financial best practices that are told to us. And usually they're in our best interest. But I find that as we become adults and get out in the world, what ends up happening is that we forget to dream. We forget to actually ask ourselves what's important, because it's not always about making more money. In fact, It often isn't. You can make lots of money, but if you're miserable, who cares?
Yeah, totally. So let's talk a little bit more about that why. So you discovered your why. You found something, and I know that this was something that you wanted to talk about when it comes to reaching out to folks in the non-monogamous communities, other marginalized communities. It was something that you discovered that you wanted to tell me about, that kind of led you to where you are today, going after the communities that you're going after.
Sure. Yeah. So years ago, not too many years ago, I guess it was 2000, almost 10 years ago at this point, this is when I really started to catalyze the idea that I wanted to do money coaching. I was in a kind of a not sure place, and I love the phrase that I heard once, that when you don't know what to do, you find someone to help and help them. So I'm like, all right, okay. It's a good kind of life lesson. It's like, when you're not sure what to do, find someone who needs help. And so I was in that mindset, and I realized I'd done a lot of money work, and I realized that a lot of people needed money help. And so I was sort of developing this idea to go into business and do money coaching. And so I went to a training class, and I went to this financial counselor's training class. And maybe we don't even need to go into who was doing it, but I went to this place, and I was learning how to do financial coaching and counseling. And during the course of this 3-day, I think it was a 3-day event, there were definitely some, shall I say, some kind of personality, ethical conflicts that came up, as in the people who were facilitating this course had a lot of opinions about things that were really, shall I say, not in alignment with me. For example, so we were talking about coaching couples versus individuals, because there are there are many different things that you have to do with couples than you do with individuals. There's just a different mindset. You have different money interactions and personal interactions. And so I was asking, what about, what are the legal ramifications? There's one question I asked: what are the legal ramifications for same-sex couples versus hetero opposite sex couples? This was back before same-sex marriage was legalized. And so, that was, it was a legal question that I had. And the facilitators went into this big, long, frankly, completely irrelevant just rant about how they didn't want to support their agenda, and they didn't want to, they're not doing this sort of thing, and that they would actually treat them as not a couple, and they would just,
what?
And they would charge them double, and
God,
as if that, yes, and this is not, this is, and I'm not trying to defame anyone, but this is legitimately what happened. And so meanwhile, my jaw is on the floor, and I'm like, because all I was asking was like, how do you do this differently? I wasn't trying to be super provocative or anything like that. And I just sort of like slumped in my chair going like, what am I doing here? Like, it was a really powerfully negative, because this is a very popular, this team is very popular, and a lot of people probably know it. And so I was thinking to myself, like, what do I do with this? Because I really felt like icky. I feel icky, like, hearing it. That's just, yeah. And I realized that people can take their biases and they can justify it any way they want. And it's not for me to try and change people's minds if they're coming into their bigotry and their bias. all what it made me think of is that, what do I do with the people who see this team's message and say, well, that's clearly not for me. There's so much exclusion in the message. Like, these team will only work with you if you're a very specific, narrow portion in life. And that excludes lots of people. It excludes probably most people. And so I had got to this point where I'm like, what do I do? And I realized that I want to work with the people who are being ignored, the people who are not being spoken to by traditional financial media. I kind of joked and say, like, I want to work with the heathens. You know?
Hell yes. I love that.
You know, like, I want to work with the people that are just like, you know what, I'm doing things differently. I'm not working the standard, Jello mold, and I'm going to live my own life. And for the people that don't feel seen and supported and heard, that is my group. That's my mission. That's my people. And those are the people that I want to help.
Hell yes. Hell yes. I 100% feel you on that. I don't know. I don't remember if I told you, but I'm actually looking to potentially start doing something similar to do a financial coaching thing. I haven't put any of it together at all, just, trying to think about it, but I have, a similar vision. It's definitely about reaching people that aren't typically reached. Right. Financial coaching, financial literacy, these things are often out of reach, especially for marginalized communities. I think of my younger brother. So that's him right there. You can't really see it, but I'll bring this one down real quick. This is my little brother, Danny. Right. He was killed in 2019.
Sorry.
But when I look at this picture, when I see him, like, there are people that look like my brother, that financial coaching is out of reach for a myriad of reasons, right? Whether it's financial a lot of times, or the outreach isn't there, or, all of these different things. So I kind of want to ask you, like, what are you doing to outreach to those communities? How are you reaching the community that you want to reach, the people that are usually ignored? How are you reaching them?
Well, I would say one thing is going on podcasts that have to do with polyamory. like what we're doing right now, Hey,
that sounds familiar.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of it is to be where people are. So for me, the polyamory side of things is that it's a community that I'm aware of, that I'm a part of, that I know lots of people in it, in Portland and around. And so, you work with who you work with what you know. And so for me, it's a matter of getting the word out in like-minded communities and showing literacy with the community. I don't want to claim to be anything I'm not. It's why I say, like, I'm not a tax person, and I'm not a lawyer, and there's lots of things that I'm not. But what I can do is I can help people with their finances, and I understand what it means to be polyamorous. And so with that, I can speak conversantly with the specific needs, and I can speak the lingo, and I understand. And just like when you're looking for a therapist, you don't want to have to explain everything to a therapist, right? You don't want to have to explain your life and have the therapist. You don't have to educate your therapist. You want them to know the basic stuff. And so for me, that's the exact same thing, is that I want to, I want to let people know that I am able to, when someone says, like, I have, I got dinner with my metamor the other night. I don't want them to have to say, like, and this is what a metamor is,
right?
And because that gets in the way of the coaching relationship. I want people to recognize that I know that basically, like, I know how it works, and I understand the unique skills and and challenges that go into having ethical non-monogamous relationships.
Absolutely. It does. I mean, I love that this is something that we're able to bring, is to find people that are professionals like you, that we don't have to have that additional conversation. You know, that's what makes having poly-friendly professionals such a great thing. So speaking from your own experience or from the experience of having worked with polyamorous clients, what are some things that, you know, poly folks do the same? What are some things that we do differently from others? Tell me about some of your experiences.
So there's obviously some specific unique scenarios involved with folks who are in multiple relationships or non-monogamous relationships. So there's things like when you have a couple with a new partner, then there's a question about, you know, how do you pay for dates, things like that. You know, when you have a more established V or a triangle or a W or something like that, how do you manage finances when there's more than two people around, you know?
Yeah,
so yeah. And I like to say that even before you get to the multiple person scenario, you got to look at the two person scenario when it comes to sharing finances, because even that's super complicated. And most people may not even necessarily know what they do with their partner if they're in a monogamous relationship, but there's a lot of ways to combine and share or not share your finances. Things like, you know, do you go all in? Do you keep things separate? Do you do some things joint? Do you do most things joint? Do you have do you give your partner an allowance? Like, there's a lot of different ways to have relationships with money. And when you get to more than two, then you have to do that calculation, but kind of squared, right? You know, you got to do that with everyone, and you have to make those decisions, and all the more reason for you to make them intentionally and explicitly. So figuring that out and having those conversations, which, you know, conversations is shouldn't be a hard thing to do here. This is not a conversation-free world, you know, but you know, people don't necessarily know or want to have conversations about money, and that's something that I'm here to try and help people kind of break the stigma about, break the taboo, and realize that these hard conversations can actually lead to better and more powerful and more connected relationships.
Totally agree with that. I kind of think that goes back to what we started talking about, which was the attachment theory of money. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about that, because you have a money quiz on your website, which I took, and I'll talk about what my results were later. But tell me about what you've discovered about, you know, this attachment theory and how it applies to money.
So for people who aren't necessarily familiar with attachment style, I'm going to guess that a lot of people on this or listening to this are, but attachment style is our way of relating to others. And oftentimes we think about it in terms of romantic partners, but it could also be, you know, parent, child, you know, work, anything that we have, any people that we have relationships to. And you may have heard phrases like, you know, secure attachment or anxious avoidance, and it's the way in which we relate. So, you know, if you have an anxious attachment to, you know, in your relationships, then you tend to be challenged and always want to be kind of pushing the person or pulling the person closer to you. And if you're avoidant, then you tend to be maybe someone who's, you know, more overwhelmed by, you know, when a partner wants a lot of emotional attention, they may want to push them away. And these are ways that we can model and understand how we interact with others. And so a lot of people may be familiar with attachment style as it relates to people, but that's also true with money as well. You can have an attachment style and a relationship with anything, and money affects every aspect of our lives. We deal with money all the time in every way in our life. And so we have a money attachment style too. And realizing that, it was very interesting that when I was talking to clients and other people, I realized that this is something, it's like the money story. It's, what is your relationship to money? Do you have a secure attachment to money? Which is to say, do you believe that you'll have enough and that you don't need to cling and you don't need to run away from it? You know, some people have an anxious attachment to money where they don't feel like they're going to have enough. And that was totally me growing up, is the scarcity mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but there's also other different attachment styles as well. There's avoidant, like money. What's that? I don't think about it. I don't want to think about it. I pretend that money doesn't exist. And so I developed this short quiz in order to be able to help people understand their own money attachment style. And then, because that tells you both your strengths and your challenges, gives you ideas on how you can improve your relationship or just become more aware of it. So I found it was a very helpful and powerful way of modeling your relationship to money, which is something that I see and deal with all of the time with people I work with.
Yeah, I loved taking that quiz. I loved what I learned from it. It was really cool too. So my attachment style ended up being secure, although there were some questions that I was like, oh, it's one of these two, somewhere in the middle. And there's definitely some anxiety for me too. Now I'm going to challenge you on something. I'm going to ask you something that might be a little challenging. That was the word. When it comes to these attachment styles, I think, this is just my theory here, that privilege has a lot plays a part in this, right? So if you come from a family, and privilege of all kinds, right? So I come from a family that had both my parents, and they were able-bodied, and everything was good. They could work, they could, and everything. So even though we weren't rich, we didn't have a ton of money, there was always enough, right? And you seem to have something similar, but people that are more marginalized, that come from different communities that don't have nearly enough, might have different attachment styles, might not feel. My theory here is that more marginalized community might have more anxious attachment styles than secure. What do you think?
It's an interesting question. I think very strongly that our attachment style to money, just like our attachment style in relating to others, is very much affected by our family of origin. So our upbringing, definitely, because we don't natively have any relationship to money at all. Like, money is not something that we are born even understanding. We're taught this. Money is modeled for us by our parents and our guardians and our siblings and things like that. So we learn these ways of relating. So I think that one's way of relating, because it's based on how it was modeled for us, that yes, if you have positions of privilege, of whatever hue of privilege, then that could definitely affect one's attachment style. But I would also, I wonder how much, because I'm thinking I'm thinking of the idea that you don't have to be insecure. You said the difference between being poor and broke, as in, you can have not a lot and be secure about it. There was,
right,
the story of, like, my family, we never had much, we didn't do much for Christmas, but we always knew we'd get by. So you take a family like that, and what they're modeling is a secure attachment. So we're going to make do, we're going to get through together. And that's, you could be, in a very low income, very marginalized situation and still have that. And the reverse is also true, which is to say that you could come from very wealthy area. You can come from tons of money, tons of privilege and everything. But there's a thing that happens when people that have a lot of wealth, is that sometimes the only thing that you gain from having a lot of money is the fear of losing it.
Yep.
So, what have you really gained there? And so you could have a situation where you have tons of privilege, tons of wealth, but you're modeling this, we have this and we can't lose it. So I think there is some kind of relationship to privilege, but I think that money attachment style can come from many different backgrounds. And I think anyone can have any type of relationship style, and they're all okay. There's nothing wrong with you if you have an anxious attachment. It's just important to understand how you relate to money, and so that you can make your decisions based on that.
I love it. Yeah, I think of, like, I'm just imagining, like, two young kids growing up in the same household, And one of them grows up understanding, yeah, I mean, we barely have anything, but we make it by. The other one's like, we never have anything. Growing up in the same household and just having different mindsets around money. So
absolutely. And you're making me want to ask my brother to take my money quiz, because now I want to find out. I want to find out what his money attachment style is compared to mine, and see, because we both grew up in the same house. That's
interesting. Hell yeah. I like it. It was one other thing that I wanted to ask you, and it was about your 5 days to reset. What was it called? 5 days. Tell me what it was.
It's your 5-day money reset. So
5-day money reset. There you go.
Your 5-day money reset. And this is, I don't want to say this, this isn't exclusive, but this is kind of a very new thing. I actually just released this this week. So depending on when you're listening to it, it was, in the past, but so this is a new announcement. So I just created a mini course for helping people reset their understanding and relationship of money. So because I'm all about relationships, and I'm all about relationships with money. And so your 5-day money reset is basically a chance to start over with money, break your preconceived notions and habits and beliefs. It's a chance to do a reset. We're all talking about resets now, with the pandemic. It's like, getting out and doing things differently, and, doing your job differently, or relating to your partner differently. And so too with money. So this is an opportunity for people to rethink things that they haven't thought about. Like when you go to spend money, you pull out a particular card. Maybe you haven't made that decision in a really long time. Do you spend with a credit card? Do you spend with a debit card? Do you take on debt? What do you believe about these things? These are all decisions that we've probably made a long time ago, and we haven't revisited them recently. And so this is a great opportunity for people to really look at the decisions that they've made and make them again, to make sure that they're still working for them, and that their authentic self is making their decisions towards money.
I love that. There is a freedom that I've found in exactly that, connecting with my authentic self when it comes to my own personal journey of money. Like, oh man, I'm telling you, this fear, this anxiety, this like frustration around it, and it was just always there. But it wasn't necessarily your quiz, because I took that earlier this week, and it was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But over the past several months, especially, it's been a lot of just kind of turning inward and saying, you know what, it's like turning into that secure attachment, that that idea of like the worst that can happen right now really isn't all that bad. Right.
I mean, you can, money anxiety can crop up in any situation. The catalyst can be, some kind of conversation you had. I'm glad to hear that my quiz didn't spark that in you, because I'm trying to make it do the opposite. So I'm glad I didn't cause anxiety in your life.
Definitely not.
I might take that down if that's the case. So hopefully that's not a thing. But money anxiety can happen anywhere. It can be as simple as a conversation you have with someone, simple as, getting a letter in the mail, or reading an email, or seeing someone's post on Instagram where their perfectly curated life, or making a little bit less money than you did last month. And then that brings up all sorts of fears of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be out on the street. So it is a constant, I don't say constant, but it is a lifelong struggle for us to get out of our own way and to develop the positive mindsets that can help us thrive. Because you're not going to be out on the street, like in most cases, we're going to figure it out. You can make the decisions that are in line with your goals and your dreams, so that when you get further along in life, you can say, this is where I wanted to be, not this is where someone else told me I should be. And we can do that.
Definitely. But I mean, man, I read a lot of stories right now. Like something that you said right now just kind of struck me, where I'm looking in Facebook, and there are people who are wind up houseless because their landlord finds out that they're polyam or trans or whatever. Like, actually, I don't think that they're allowed to discriminate against trans, but definitely polyam, but people get kicked out of their homes, right? People get kicked out of their families of origin for being gay or trans or whatever, any of these things. So like, there's a lot of those types of things that that like I don't want to take away from. And like when I talk about marginalized communities, like that's the stuff that comes to mind for me, right? Is people that have really had life kick the shit out of them for, you know, whatever reason, and they've just been struggling, and there's hope. You know, I think that if there's anything that I'm getting from you, Mike, is that there's hope. You know, no matter what the situation that you're in.
Yeah, you brought up a very good point, which is that, you know, I think there's some people have this belief that everything is fine and everyone can become wealthy, and if you're not wealthy, it's your fault. And I very strongly disagree with that. I think there is systemic injustice, and that leads to financial injustice in our society. There are people who are you know, like I said, kicked out of their home for no fault of their own. It's not like they missed payments. It's just that they were disagreeing with the person who had financial power over them. And that is injustice. And as long as there is injustice, I've got plenty of work to do. So the way I figure it is that I don't want to say that, oh, you know, everyone can be fine and, you know, it's just your fault if you don't, you know, so I don't want to be Pollyanna about that. But I also do believe that within the confines of this sometimes very unjust world, we have more power than we think. We can actually work within the confines of the system that is put around us that we maybe had nothing to do with, that maybe is just because we are who we are, that we can work within that and we can find a way to thrive.
Yes. Yep.
So yeah. I don't say it's easy. I don't say, you know, everyone can do it. I believe that it is possible, and I believe that we can do that. And that is basically how my mission, how my passion is that I want to help people who feel like they can't, and I want to change their mind and tell them that they can.
Yes. Yes. Hell yes, that's what I'm talking about. Mike, I just want to thank you for spending some time with me today. I feel like we really got to know each other. I would love to pick your brain more later on. So before we head out, I want to ask you a couple of things. First of all, is there anything that I missed? Is there anything that you wish that I had asked, or some final thoughts that you might want to leave with the audience?
So a couple of things. Thanks for asking. So it's, first of all, that 5-day money reset that I was talking about, that's a free offer that I have. So I wasn't, you know, mentioning that for anything other than that's a free thing you can do. You can sign up on my website at empathicfinance.com, and you'll see it right there. So the other thing is that, you know, so I am a money coach. I'm a financial coach. So I help professionals and anyone who is interested in improving their money story and improving their money situation. I help people get to a better place with money and to feel better about their money situation. So if that's something you're interested in, hit me up, go to empathicfinance.com and shoot me an email, and I would love to help you on your money journey.
Awesome. And the last thing I'm going to ask you, and I'm just going to ask you because I have you here. So I told you I'm looking to start my own financial coaching thing, right? And the first person that I'm going to talk to is somebody that I know personally, and like we're setting this up for a few days from now. And I'm like jotting down ideas like, okay, well, I'm going to start talking about, you know, what is an asset? What's a liability? We'll do a budget. What would you tell me? Like, what are the first things that you would go over with one of your clients?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would want to start with getting information before I start being prescriptive. You know, I never tell people this is how much you should spend and this is what you should do. I never go, even when I understand people's financial situation, I never point the finger and say this is what you should do and not. I let someone tell me what's important. And so what I would do is I would go on a big fact-finding mission, and I would say, on the practical side, you know, what do you have? What do you not have? What are you looking for? And then also the emotional side, which is that what are your goals? What are your challenges? What are your dreams? You know, where do you see yourself in 5, 10, 20, 50 years? You know, all of those things they inform your money picture, and arguably they supersede it. So I would spend some time asking a lot of questions about what makes your friend, your person, your colleague tick, and find out what's really important to them. And then that's the building blocks for figuring out what their money path is from there.
It's fantastic. Mike, once again, thank you so much for hanging out with me, for spending some time with me. I really, really appreciate it. Once again, everybody, follow Mike at Mike Pumphrey Money Coach on Instagram. And for more information, go to empathicfinance.com. This was awesome, dude.
Thank you so much. It was great. It was great chatting with you. Hope to do it again soon.
Absolutely. And thank you, as always, to our live audience for tuning in. Remember, when we're live, you get no commercial downloads, no commercial interruptions. Downloads? Well, the same can't be said for the podcast downloads. So if you want to avoid the commercial interruptions, be sure to catch us live Monday through Wednesday, 2:30 Pacific time, or sign up for our Patreon, where you'll get access to our commercial-free RSS feed and support the show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, wherever it is that you download your podcast. And if you haven't already, please leave us a review. We'll really appreciate it. That's all we've got for you all today. Thank you one more time to Mike, and for everybody else, until next time.
Have a nice day!
Thank you for tuning in to the Practicing Polyamory podcast. Would you or someone in your polycule like to be a guest? Sign up at practicingpolyamory.com and join the conversation. Please support us by subscribing, liking, and following us on social media at Practicing Polya by clicking any of the affiliate links on our website or by subscribing at patreon.com/practicingpolya.